So that would be helpful. Let me do that. Computer screen. Okay. How's that looking?
Good.
Got the slide showing? All right. And we got recording going. So great. All right, everybody, it's November 30th. Almost December 1st in Sweden, or maybe it is December 1st already. Welcome. I hope everybody, at least in the US, had a great Thanksgiving. We've got the holiday season upon us, and we wanted to talk about year end. And so I hope everybody's ready to share today. We decided to do a roundtable discussion. So if you haven't done your homework and already thought about a year-end tip or two that you can share, go ahead and use the intro time now to think about your experiences or questions you have about year-end that you can pose to the group. We're going to just have an old-fashioned roundtable today, and hopefully you'll pick up some great tips to make it just go a little bit smoother this year and reduce the stress level a little bit. I did collect a few beforehand that I can share as we get into it, but I'm hoping everybody is ready to share their experiences and again, ask some questions from the group as well. Okay, let's dive in with a couple quick announcements as well. And as you might expect, we have a Mix It Up coming up in December. I think it's going to be on the 21st, trying to gauge for when folks are taking off and if everybody will still be at it, or maybe it'll be a nice quiet time for everybody to join in. So hopefully on December 21st, we're going to put together a panel of system administrators to talk stuff techie around Business Central. So anything around managing permissions, managing environments, testing, you name it, database management and so forth. We're going to have a good panel discussion on that. So bring your questions for the panel as well, and look forward to that. You can go ahead and register. That is open and available for registration right now. And then we have a pretty exciting announcement. Belinda, since you're on, would you like to share the good news with everyone?
Yeah, so starting in 2022, we're going to start having a Power Platform Mix It Up. Okay, thank you. I don't know who's throwing all the hearts out there, but isn't that cool? So yay, it's gonna have a BC slant to it, but not exclusively BC. So woohoo, party.
And so we just have gotten this set up. I'll post an announcement once it's all finalized and locked in on our current meetup group. So if you want to join that new meetup group and register for the January Mix It Up, you can do that. And it will be separate, but kind of affiliated. So it'll be a day or two before or after, or did we decide a week? Anyway, it'll be monthly too. So watch the calendar for that, and we'll start that up in January. So pretty cool. All right. And we also know that DynamicsCon is coming up next spring. They're accepting proposals for sessions right now, and so make sure you get that on your calendar. I think it's the third week in March. I can't remember exactly. But go ahead and pop out to the website. They've got their whole agenda ready to go there, and you can make sure to reserve that on your calendar. So I want to make sure you know about that. Okay, you're reading this right. We are doing a non-tequila based cocktail for the first time ever, perhaps. I'm not sure, but this is one of my personal favorites, so I was very happy to see this come up. I think we've had a few requests for this through our surveys. And so we're going to talk about the classic Manhattan today. And we have a special bartender guest as well. So let's see how to go ahead and make one.
All right, hello. Welcome to another Mix It Up. And as you might guess, we have a special guest here today. I am actually in person with Belinda Allen. So she is going to actually maybe try and teach me to be a real bartender and actually follow a recipe. So Belinda, what are we making?
We are making Manhattans, my favorite drink, and I would not let her put the generic label on tequila that says bourbon. So There's a tequila version.
Oh, dang nabbit.
So Kim's
Sorry.
gonna have tequila and I'm gonna have a Maker's Mark one, which is my favorite Manhattan. So let's get started. We each have a shaker.
This is really fancy. I mean, this is upscale for mixing.
That's a holiday one. It's in the shape of a snowman. Yeah, I took the other one, and ooh, the ice already feels good. It's a little warm here in the south. Okay, so to do this, we start with our main liquor.
Okay.
And we're going to do 2 parts to this to 1 part vermouth. So we're both going to use vermouth. And for a regular Manhattan, you could have rye bourbon or rye whiskey, or you could use bourbon whiskey. I prefer bourbon whiskey. Maker's Mark is my favorite, not Creek my second favorite. And then other than that, anything will do.
How come yours is bigger than mine?
I got a bigger shaker. I don't know. You could do multiple ones
Well,
of them.
you know,
That's
I mean,
an ounce. So see, I would find the ounce on here.
Oh, so that's what an ounce looks like.
Yeah, yeah. It's not what you normally drink when you do an
First
ounce,
time
but
Kim's ever
anyhow.
measured too.
Okay. All right.
I'm not sure she's actually measuring. I think she's just,
Okay,
yeah,
so
I can have one here. I can have one here. Oh, I can have one here.
the main liquor. Okay. And
I think it's 1 for you, 2 for me, 1 for you, 2 for me.
and we'll put that on. Okay, and then we're going to share the vermouth. So 2 parts of your main liquor and 1 part vermouth. So,
Well, now I just messed that up because I put 3 parts in mine.
well, now you're going to have to give I'm going to give a little more too.
See?
Yeah, you know, we've been playing pickleball since Kim's been here visiting. So there'll be no pickleball tomorrow. I can assure you that. So anyhow, okay, so my turn to get some of the vermouth. And then we add a little bit of like a dash or 2 of bitters. Now for the tequila one, well, first of all, on the tequila, you have to have that kind of tequila. It doesn't have to be Patron, but it has to be the other name.
Añejo.
Añejo, right? Okay. Well, see, I'm the
This
one
is
who.
not a Blanco. It's a little more aged. It should be a little more smooth, kind of like whiskey
This is why I stick with bourbon.
or bourbon.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then I just use an Angostura bitters, and so let me put in a dash or 2 of Angostura bitters. Okay.
Not
Now,
going overboard on this.
now we go to music because we're going to have our Shake It Up dance. Here we go. You ready?
Yes.
So then we pour it through the strainer into our martini glasses. And mine's dripping a little bit. And I probably have too much. Nope, just enough. Look at there.
Ooh, look at that. Perfect.
All right. Then for the tequila one, you're going to put in a wedge of lemon or a little bit of orange. And I was bad at that. And Mark, I didn't get the good cherries. I got the cheap one.
And that's
So-
okay, because I like those.
Yeah, you know,
Fail.
they add all the artificial flavors. They get artificial colors.
Cherries in my youth.
It's all fake.
So
All right.
some of those as soon as we're done.
Well, actually, I'm good because I only eat the cherry at the end when it's been soaking in the alcohol all that time. So this is the traditional Manhattan, and you have the tequila one. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.
I got it a little strong on something, but
I wonder why.
I have company. Bye, everybody.
There you go. If you have never tried it, play with it. There's such is the beauty of making cocktails, right? Because you can imbue your personal preferences with it. I make mine slightly different. Belinda mentioned rye whiskey. That's a delightful treat as well to make a Manhattan with rye. So anyway, that's a good winter drink. Thank you.
I like bourbon. I'm not going to go for rye. Bourbon girl.
Okay, as mentioned, we are doing a roundtable today, so I hope everybody is ready with their unmute button to share tips and tricks. Again, of course, we're recording this like we always do, and we post those recordings out to the YouTube channels, so you can review it later, share with families and friends. And if you want to share your webcam, you can still do that as well. Let's go ahead and dive in. And this is not just around financial year end, but really anything related to your company. So if you're talking about your audits or regulatory reporting that you have to do, or certainly inventory, take an inventory at year end, whatever you want to talk about around year end, just again to help everybody save a little bit of time and possibly some errors, and wrapping up 2021. So let's go to the group. Who is ready to share some tips?
Okay, I'll start.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Always has to be somebody to start. Appreciate that.
Yep. So I have 2 tips. The first tip is to go through your chart of accounts and make sure that your accounts are classified correctly, whether it's a balance sheet account or an income statement account. As you know, if they're not correct, they're not going to close properly, and then you're going to have issues. So that's tip number 1. And then tip number 2 is, if this is your first time closing within Business Central and you're not really sure and you're just on easy, make a backup of that company, create a copy of it, and make it a test company and close in there first, and then pull your reports to make sure everything looks the way it should prior to actually doing it in your true production company. So those are my 2 tips.
Great point. Great point. And it's getting easier and easier to make copies as well, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Excellent.
Mark, I can go next.
Thanks, Carrie.
So I completely agree with Kristen on reviewing your classifications on income statement versus balance sheet ahead of time. I can say that someone I was working with a couple of years ago was reviewing their closing entry before they posted it, and they said, well, there's a balance sheet account in here. And they said, this isn't an income statement account. So we went and looked at their chart of accounts, and sure enough, even though you know it's a balance sheet account, the system doesn't unless you tell them. So definitely agree on that one. And then I'll just add, if you're doing any sort of year-end allocations, so maybe you're putting everything in one account during the year and then allocating it to departments at year end, take advantage of the balance and allocation functionality in the recurring general journals, because that'll help eliminate the need for spreadsheets. You don't even have to look at the balance of your accounts because the system can do it for you. So I think they've added new functionality as well when it comes to allocating by dimension, a new method. So take advantage of the allocation functionality and balance in recurring general journals.
Great tip there. Yes. I wonder how many people aren't doing that, aren't taking advantage of that. Excellent. I'll remind you too, if you want to ask some questions out to the group because you're got something coming up or you're concerned about something, we'll handle those too. Who else has a tip or a question?
I have a question that could turn into a tip. So let's see, who do I want to ask? I think I'll ask Mr. Dorward. So Sean, unmute. Did he leave? He's there.
Suddenly can't find the mute button. Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'll ask Kristen. When you, I think everybody should close the year like right away, because I'm assuming, so this is the question, it's a yes or no, and then you could expand on it. You could close out adjustments to a previously closed year.
Correct. Yeah, so you can go ahead and close the year as soon as you're ready to, and then if you have corrections or adjustments that need to be entered, you would go ahead and code those, as long as you are allowed to post to a previous period, right? So in the general ledger setup window, they have the allow posting from and allow posting to, and then at the user setup window as well. So just a tip there as well to make sure to utilize those dates so that your users aren't posting to periods they shouldn't be. But back to your question, if you close and then you have to do an adjustment, you can go ahead and post that in the general journal. And then you'd have to do the year-end closing one more time to catch those additional transactions.
Does it work like in NAV though, where if you close the year, you can no longer post inventory and you can't reopen a closed year? So you have to definitely be done with inventory. So I wouldn't do it right away.
Well,
I
I
don't
would,
answer about NAV.
yeah, I mean, I would say change the GL setup to not allow to post in the old period, and then only for those very few users that has to be able to post in the past, have them on the user setup. Most clients that I've ever worked with honestly don't close the year in the accounting periods until after the CPA has done whatever they need to do. And then you can actually create journal entries with a C date, with a closing date as well.
well,
I think
that's my question. I'm sorry, Carrie, because I want to hear what you have to say. But my question really then kind of evolves, Henrik. Can you, like, when you're ready to produce your December statements, let's say our fiscal year is a calendar year, can we go ahead then and close December? Because in theory, at that point, your inventory should be completed, and then just make the CPA entries later. I find it real uncomfortable to me to work on financial statements where for 3 months or however long it takes for the CPA to do the final close. And sometimes that could be 3 or 4 months with the year not closed.
I mean, I don't see a problem with doing that. I know what you're saying, but it's also a thing where you may get an invoice on January 2nd. It pertains to, it's a December expense, right? So you want to
Oh, right. Yeah,
post
I'm
it in.
not saying on January 1st you close it. I'm suggesting that you close it, whenever you finish your December statement. So like on the 15th of January or something like that,
Yeah,
not January 1st. Yeah.
right. I mean, if you're able to do it, you can definitely do it. But I mean, just knowing once you actually close, you're done. There's so many workarounds you got to do to get it done right. So in practicality, most people don't do it. That's why most people
Interesting.
close
So
it in the
now
GL.
I'm
GL
very confused because I don't think it's a workaround. You can
Well, I
close
mean,
more than once.
Yeah,
Well,
no, I
but
mean,
you don't have to close the statement either. You know, going back to Belinda's initial question, she said closing the month. There's really no closing the month in BC.
Well,
You
I meant the
continue
year.
to operate.
She meant year.
Right.
She meant year.
Yeah, I did mean year. Yeah, thank you.
But I think too, a lot of people get confused in accounting periods when they close the year, thinking that it means they can't post GL transactions anymore, which is not the case. It just means that these periods are within a closed year and you can't change starting and ending dates. But I think a lot of people get confused and think, oh my gosh, the year's closed, I can't post into it anymore, which is not necessarily the case. So I think what we usually train and recommend is once you've kind of finished your normal, month-end close process, like Belinda said, if you finish it on the 15th and you think you've posted all your entries for the year before the auditors are done, go ahead and close your year, close your income statement so that you can run your reports. And then if you still need to post adjustments, I'm not 100% sure about inventory, but if you do need to post GL adjustments, you can do that, no problem, as long as your user dates are right, and then just close your income statement again. So that's typically what we'll recommend.
So going back to
Andrea-
Andrea's
Oh, I'm
question,
sorry.
I was going to go back to Andrea's question about inventory. As long as you haven't closed the inventory period, you should be able to post inventory transactions into the prior year. So if you close your income statement first and then close your or your inventory periods at the very end, you should be able to do inventory adjustments up until you make that final close with the auditor's adjustments at the end.
I think that, sorry, I was like trying to unmute it and my keyboard's flipping everywhere. That's what I took to mean for like closing the year, is like going into close the income statement. Because once you do that, I didn't think you could any longer, not close income statement.
Close inventory periods?
Yeah, it's like if you go into like fiscal years, the accounting periods, and you click close years, you're done with inventory. So inventory, I didn't think you could post inventory back into those periods. You could still post GL entries like with user setup, but I didn't think you could close the year and that keep your inventory allowed to be open.
Well, don't
I've
forget
never had
you
a
can
problem posting
reopen.
back into inventory with my inventory period closed, or with the, not the inventory period, but the GL closed.
Correct.
And you can reopen inventory periods, just FYI.
You can't reopen the accounting period. So I thought it was accounting period, like, because once that's closed, I always associated that with the inventory
No,
period
no.
closed.
So again, like Carrie said, closing the accounting periods, all that means is that those period dates are fixed. They cannot be changed or deleted. So in other words, if you have a situation where you're acquired by another company and they want you to do a short year because you're going to roll over to their fiscal year, if the periods are closed, you can't do that. Because you can't change the periods once they're closed. It has nothing to do whether or not you're able to post into that period or not. Completely separate. Big misconception. I had that misconception, by the way, until just a couple of years ago. So.
I'm going to jump back to easier solutions. Inventory is obviously difficult, but one of the simple ones to make sure you get your year end closed right is when you close the income statement, make sure you check the boxes for all the dimensions that you have been using for the year, because otherwise you're going to leave some balances out there for the individual dimension balances.
I think that also depends. I actually wrote an article on this because someone asked me that, but I think that depends on a couple factors. I agree. I usually close them out by dimension because if it went into a certain combination, I want to completely clear it out in case I'm doing any sort of analysis by dimensions in the future. But if you're not reporting at that level, you don't necessarily need all the dimension combinations because it does create a much longer entry. You might have blocked dimensions as you went through the year, things like that. So I usually agree with you, Rob, that I close out by all dimension combinations because I don't want those balances lingering. But I think it does depend on a couple of factors and how you're using dimensions and reporting.
Yeah.
That's actually the one that I was going to ask about, because it happens to us every year that we have a lot of dimensions that we close and we have to reopen them. Is there any workaround for that?
It depends also on if you have dimensions required for posting on certain accounts. Your closing entry is still going to follow those requirements. So unless they're not, code mandatory, then I don't know of a workaround. I don't know if anyone else has thoughts on that.
You could take the code mandatory off temporarily while you're closing.
Yeah, that's not what we do, but I was just thinking about there was a simple way, but it makes sense.
Yeah, because I made that mistake last year. We did a complete dimension review and we were going to block a bunch of dimensions for the next year. So I'm like, let me get a head start on the new fiscal year. And I went in and I blocked them all. And then I went to do my closing entry and I was like, oh, shoot. So I think we ended up maybe not using all the dimensions in closing. But yeah, it's like if you have blocked them throughout the year, changed them, then kind of in a tough situation.
And it's super fun because it just airs one at a time. So you get to figure out all the GLs that you blocked and all the dimensions you blocked, one at a time. It's great.
and then remember to change it back, right? Like,
yeah, I was like writing them all down, like screenshots of everyone. I was like, well, this is fun.
Yep.
Correct.
I think I went through that once, and I think I was able to rapid start everything out, unblock everything, and then rapid start it back in afterwards.
Yes.
That's smart.
I'm just smiling because now you know what we have to go through every time we do a data conversion.
That's true.
So one tip that I wanna bring up is every year after people do the 1099s, they discover, oh crap, that's right, I just added 1099 code whatever to this vendor, halfway through the year, so half my payments doesn't have a 1099 code. So do yourself a favor and kind of review those as well.
You stole one of my tips. I was gonna say that. I was like, AP cleanup. It's super important.
It really is, and and to me, so I think people who is not used to nav BC. I think the 1099 functionality is very different than it is apparently in other systems, because in NAV and BC you can pay somebody an invoice and it's actually two different 1099 codes, and it will split them out. Whereas 99.9% of all customers I've ever worked with, a vendor is one specific 1099 code, right? So people forget that just because you change the 1099 code on the vendor, that does not update the ledger entries, or at least it didn't used to. I think now it actually does that, but that did not used to be the case.
And the other thing is Microsoft is always very slow to get that 1099 update out. And this year there's a new form.
Right.
There's another new form this.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
again.
Yeah,
Well,
they changed it so you can now have 3 forms on one page.
On the NEC.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I have one.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
It's one of those ones when I shared this previously, I got some eyes rolling, but not everyone who's on this call maybe has been on NAV or BC for a length of time. And it is amazing how many customers I've worked with over the years that don't reconcile their subledgers to their general ledger as part of their month-end process. They do it once a year.
Ooh.
So, but you'd be surprised how many that is the case, because why would it be wrong? So, great, love it. So one of the things that I mentioned, it's kind of a multi-step process. It's number one, especially AP, AR, and inventory, right? Look at those and make sure that everything matches. If it doesn't, do it now. You don't have to wait until year end to do that. And then try to convince that person to do it on a monthly basis, because I think they'll realize after they go through a year's worth of transactions, trying to figure out where the problem is, narrowing it down, they would have been better off doing it monthly. The other big one that's kind of related to that a little bit is whether or not you have direct posting enabled for your GL accounts. There have been many times where somebody says, oh no, we know we have those all set up properly. And then for some reason, somebody with permissions goes into the chart of accounts and allows or enables direct posting on an account and never changes it back. They might not have ever should have done that originally. And so now all of a sudden your subledgers are out because people are direct posting to what I call control accounts. So reviewing those, making sure that every account that's used in any sort of posting setup is not allowed or disallowed for direct posting. And those kind of all tie together. And again, try to get people to do this on a monthly basis instead of waiting until the year end.
So the easy way I always tell people to find the issue is I go to do a drill down on the amount on those GL accounts, and then I just filter on batch name not blank. And that's that's the amount that you're out of balance with. The end.
Yep. Well, if it's one.
Right. Oh, no, I mean,
yeah.
But that's generally the issue, right? So it's easy enough to find, but it's a lot of work, and they shouldn't have been there to begin with.
Correct.
I always tell people, if you need to do some weird adjustments for whatever reason, create another account and put the adjustments in that account.
But unfortunately, we get the opportunity to share that suggestion as we're trying to help them figure out why the heck things are out of balance.
Yep.
Yeah. And something, the worst case scenario is whenever you migrate, because it happened to me like 6 years ago. And once we finished uploading the accounts, I was like, hey, it's out of balance. And they told me, well, it's always been out of balance. And I was like, okay, good, but I assume that it was on balance. Oh, no, it's been like that for years. It's like, okay, great, good to know. So
Well,
to
we're
get to that
laughing.
first. Oh, now, of course, I'm laughing now. It's been 6 years. and 10
we've always done it that way.
implementations. Yeah, 2 implementations, 10 companies, so we learn.
When you're laughing about that, when I'm working with someone who's doing an implementation, or I have been, one of the first things I tell them is, all right, I want you to go into your existing legacy system and make sure that your aged payables and aged receivables match your GL balances. And they look at me and they go, oh, I don't know that I've ever checked that. And then they look at it in that system and it's out of balance. And I said, well, you know what? If you were going to bring that forward and then 6 months down the road, tell me, hey, Cynthia, something's wrong in NAV, it's out of balance. First thing I do is I go back to go live day and say, is the entry on that day in balance? If it's not, that's where your problem is.
Right. I know the feeling. I know the
So I got a little mean face on my suggestion for Kristen from Carrie. Maybe that's why I didn't do very well on accounting 101. I guess I don't know. I thought that was the answer.
You know what's funny is my accounting professor always taught me there's no such thing as a plug number because it's always the answer is somewhere. You just have to find it. So I just laughed. There's no such thing as a plug.
Yeah, my answer is always call Carrie Co. So that's always my answer.
I'll go.
Yeah, I have a question.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I have a question for, this is our first time in Business Central, and I'm just curious if there anything unique about foreign exchange in Business Central versus NAV in terms of closing at the end of the year. We have US and Canadian currencies. No? Okay.
Do you have one of the automatic currencies where it just kind of comes in? Or do you manually enter your currency?
We manually enter it twice a month.
There's a simple way to do it that your partner should be able to do without much dev time, like about 15, 20 minutes, that brings in the currency rate for you daily.
with a service.
And no, it's actually free. So
Yes, that's
it's
right.
just
There's
an
a new
API
service.
call.
Okay, we do it on a daily basis, but that's just for Mexico. We have to keep it in sync.
Yeah, so we were doing it for several currencies. It's an API call. The developers can write it pretty fast. It's free, and it just brings it into the system for you.
Okay, it's interesting. Can you provide some information? I would like it for the USI.
I think Eric Haugaard has an app in the app source for it that I believe is free. I'm trying to find
Yeah, I was like, it wasn't an app. It was an open API call that went out to like Yahoo Exchange or something.
Yeah,
and,
I think that's what he does.
Yeah, so this was a free one because I know there's paid for ones, or there used to be a paid program for it, but this one just pinged it. I'm trying to remember. Steve Chensky told me about it, and then my developer built it while Steve was on the phone with us, so then we didn't pay for them. I was like, thanks, Steve. I'm ripping this idea off, and my developer wrote it. So that's why I was like, it's pretty fast. So I know the partners can pop them in. It's just a good way to
Andrea,
yeah.
One of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize is that not every app that's out there is for a charge. There are still apps out there, that, small apps that developers are providing or organizations are providing, and they don't charge for them.
Interesting. Yeah,
So
this is free too, but we built it, so it was a little
right.
different.
But I guess I just want to make sure that people who are on this call might not realize it, that just because an app is out there does not mean it costs anything. Just like on our phones, just because it's an app that we download doesn't mean it's going to be a charge.
Okay, I dumped a link to Eric Haugaard's one. It's free. I get nothing out of it if you guys install it or not. But I know that he uses some free API call as well. And I think he even has a video on how he actually did the development on it, if you look on his YouTube channel.
That one works on on-prem?
That I don't know. I don't know if you can actually install apps from on-prem from the app source.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You're right. Yeah, you cannot on-prem.
Yeah, mine was an on-prem one. So if you're still on Nav, the dev team should be able to build that pretty fast.
Yeah. Okay, I'm on BC, but I'm on 13.3.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, so I still on-prem. That is kind of good, at a certain point.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, we're happy. Honestly, we're happy. Wow.
Oh, you will be so much happier when you get further. Just big differences.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
I'm
we
sure
just
you will.
re-implement. We just re-implemented 2020, and now it's state companies since 2020. So I wanna relax for a few years.
No, I'm just teasing you, but it's a huge difference. It's a huge difference. Mm-hmm.
Good to know.
All right, so I'll share about, I guess I shared a hot tip about currency exchange rates, but I was going to go with purchase orders and kind of like cleaning up AP, especially looking at that reconcile AP or GL to AP. That is going to give you your goods received not invoiced, just in case people didn't know that. While I think you should look at this monthly, it's very important at year end, especially coming to the year end, that you get all these invoices in and post it, because they can impact your numbers and how things go. So I would say cleaning up those, cleaning up any purchase orders over 60 days. It's bad practice to just accrue purchase orders willy-nilly anyways, but you might want to start looking at those, especially like prepaid. You just want to clear as much out as possible, because you don't want to start your new period with basically junk purchase orders.
Addendum to that, Andrea, you want to make sure that those vendor statements are correct, because there may be some errors on receiving that are keeping those POs open that you don't really have receipts for.
Yeah, that's true too. Yep, it could be on GNRI by accident, like somebody received it and it shouldn't be there. And so now you've counted inventory you don't have. And then
or didn't count.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and then even worse, you probably adjusted it out on some kind of cycle count, and now you have wandering things going on in your system. But, and then my other one, most people probably know this if you're an accountant, is the fixed asset audit. Cynthia brought up the subledger portion of it, which you don't want to direct post to fixed asset accounts, but it's more, most people should know that's also a tax liability. So if you're going into year end and you're closing your books with fixed assets that are not real, they've been disposed of, or, you know, been trashed, or they're just not in service, you are paying taxes on those. So I would get them off your books as soon as you can.
I have another question. So what if I want to be able to get documentation that supports what I have in inventory that matches what my balance sheet has in inventory? I mean, because that's something that I feel like should be part of a end of year package.
So we have inventory valuation reports that give us numbers to help tie. There's a one of the valuation reports is just really simple with a couple columns and a value on it, but there's one that gives you columns for all the different states that the inventory might be in, i.e. received not invoiced. What else is on there, everybody? Shipped not invoiced.
Shipped not invoiced.
Right, and several others. So that report, and one of the reasons people don't run that report frequently is it does take a while to run. So it's one of those reports that I recommend people even schedule. You know, go ahead and leave for the day and say, you know, go ahead and schedule it, and then so they'll have it when they come in the next day.
And that should match what's in the general ledger?
It'll actually show you what's in the general ledger, and you can prove that out because it'll give you a general ledger number, and you should be able to see that in the general ledger. One of the biggest challenges that I have found in getting those reports to work, and one of the considerations that you should have in setting up your chart of accounts, is when you're using more than one GL account for your inventory. When you're coming from a legacy system, you could manage your inventory values by location was to use separate GL accounts. I will sometimes see that legacy thinking brought into Business Central, and it makes all of your work harder. So do whatever you can to not have to manage your inventory values out of the general ledger, just having singular.
Cynthia, that sounds like a point counterpoint.
I know, because you disagree with me.
Yes. However,
again,
that is, Cynthia, you did say something though about the report taking longer. Now in BC 18 and 19, if Francisco ever gets there, he will find that those reports actually do run faster in the newer versions.
Okay.
They still take a while though, right? I mean, I still think it's
I would say
longer
they've
than
cut
most
down
reports.
half. I would say they're about
Oh, okay.
50% faster.
Oh, really?
Okay,
Good to
great.
know.
That's
I
nice.
know we run those, and they do it on a monthly basis in Mexico. Because the Mexico side, just the IRS, I will say, is just where it is really more complicated than the US. So they have to close the month. So we really have to close the month we have to close the books in a monthly basis and send the results to the Mexican government. So everything has to match pretty much.
Yeah,
So
but that
I know
report
we do
is
that.
very helpful. Yeah.
Okay. It's a little bit more complicated when you have WIP, I think. Because I really haven't never really understand the report with WIP. I know there's some
Oh, with
extra
WIP?
columns there. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know about WIP, but I know it does talk about, or it does give you, interim value, so if you're, whether or not you're posting expected cost to the general ledger or not, so you've got to be careful of that. So again, just different ways to look at it, but that report, I can't remember exactly which inventory valuation report it is, because I think the name changed in BC, if I remember correctly, but it's the landscape one with all the columns. Very, very, very helpful.
I finished the
And so
inventory, but
Belinda,
it
that,
has the same name.
oh, does it? Okay. Thought one of them changed.
Belinda, you just dumped a link for something advanced reconciliation. Is that something that you've
I've not worked with it,
used?
but I just saw it in there, and that was that piece is the reconciliation for, I think, vendors and customers. So I have not tried it, but it might be worth putting in a sandbox and playing with it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's even though it says the app is free, it's actually not free.
Oh, no?
No, it's depending on the number of matches they
Ah,
charge you something. Kind of tricky.
very tricky.
I wonder what, I'd be really curious to see what this is. I didn't realize we needed something additional to reconcile.
Well, no, it just, I think it helps you find if there's a variance. A lot of reconciliation tools I've seen like that in the past, they're all about helping you find the variance. So one tip I'll have that I share, this just general. This is a good time for everyone to make sure all your 1099 vendors have tax ID numbers and addresses, so you can mail that 1099 to them.
And also make sure you don't have more than one vendor with the same 1099 number.
Oh, good answer. I did put in a link earlier to a taxpayer ID matching service to help you verify them.
Yeah. No, I've had a customer that had 2 or 3 vendors with the same 1099
I could
vendor
totally
ID.
see that.
And so what happens is it only reported the last vendor, if I remember right.
Oh, it didn't create 2 1099s?
Nope.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
It's funny, we just went through and checked all that at ours. So we just went through like all of 1099 stuff, trying to make sure there is only one 1099 number in the system for that vendor. We also got the merge tool to merge vendors together in case we did have 2 duplicated vendors.
Yep.
We haven't never used the 1099.
And another thing there, I used to work with a client where they managed hearing aids and whatnot else, and their dispensers would sometimes change ownership, halfway through the year. So it might be, John's hearing aids in Burbank, California, but halfway through the year, Bob sold it to his associate because he was going to retire, and he now gets a new 1099 number. And you got to be careful. You can't just update the 1099 code on the existing vendor. You have to create a new vendor. Because otherwise, the new owner gets penalized for everything you paid, to the old owner.
Right. Good stuff. Wow.
I'm known for being like a 3-year-old. Why?
And the other tip is under your desk is a good place to cry when all things are failing on you. Right? Like, don't make a scene. Don't do it in front of everyone. At least, under your desk, work from home, turn off your camera, guys.
No, that's when you reach out for that whiskey or tequila.
That's right.
That's why they do that. That's why they offer the drinks, guys.
See what I have on my desk.
Liquor 43. How about that?
That's what I have on my desk, honestly. But at the end of the day, it's always to have got a hill, it's always good. It helps.
Remember what they say, you can't drink all day unless you start in the morning.
Oh, that's quite a good advice.
Oh, that's
David
funny.
Wheats, how about some tips and for public reporting, auditors, any of the fun that you've experienced?
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Yeah,
I was
sure.
gonna say, I thought desks were for sleeping under, but that's a Seinfeld reference. I guess you can cry under them too. I was gonna say a couple things. Back to Cynthia's point about reconciling. If you're gonna do it, at least do it once a year. That's good advice. Also think about making sure that your very important dimensions are right for the year. We use dimensions a lot at my now previous company for things like one-time expenses, which are accounted for below EBITDA. I just said everything financial that I know right in that sentence. But I know that when you code one-time expenses, they come out of EBITDA and they go below the line. We use a dimension for that. Man, if we code those things wrong, we're really impacting our financials. We're degrading our EBITDA and not counting for things. So if you have a huge implementation, for example, you can code that. So we try to code all those correctly on invoices and such, but they don't always get coded correctly. So I don't know how the group feels about Dimension Manager, but we love it because it lets us go back in time and correct dimensional postings that are wrong. But boy, as a part of your financial review, those really critical things that are more granular than just GL account, they're in the dimension level. You got to review those and make sure they're right and get them straight with, get them reconciled, if you will, down to the dimension level, and use Dimension Manager, whatever your tool of choice is, to get that right. What else? A couple of hygiene things. I'm a little bit more on the IT side. But you know how we are supposed to change our smoke detector batteries at the clock changes. We all do it. I know we do because we're such good citizens. But like I find year end is a good time to do stuff like that. Like go delete old change log entries, that are a year back or something. Sometimes you have downtime over the holidays and, or there's fewer people on the system, and those kinds of things can take a long time, but change log entries, for those of you who use it, the more we use it, the more we use it. And the more we use it, the more it can slow down and bog down the system. So we go just kind of clear out maybe the past year. We don't need that year anymore, or 6 months, whatever you do. I was going to say 1099, but Henrik took that from me. What else? An audit standpoint. The dimensional stuff and the reconciliation, I think, addresses most of that stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I will say your tip when it comes to the change log, I think is a good thing. At least have a plan for it. I'm working with a client right now, and we have a 2 terabyte NAV database, of which probably half of it is change log entries.
Yeah.
Well, another
Hey,
advertisement for Francisco is if he upgrades, there is already an automated program out there that can actually purge old change log transactions. Keep pushing that new version of BC, Francisco.
I will.
Yeah, but my client is in the FDA regulated, so we can't delete all changelog entries. So at least not
yeah,
all of
this
them.
one's, I know this is a more business or accounting friendly group, but we're on-prem and you ought to at least you ought to do a SQL transaction log backup quite a bit. But if you don't do it, at least do it once a year because that thing will fill up. Found out about that this year. There's all kinds of stuff, that you can do. As someone mentioned, closing POs, closing sales orders, the same thing. We have a lot of sales orders that ship out and someone pressed a button wrong and it created a back order, but we don't do back orders in our industry and they sit there open and they're messing with sales forecasts. They're messing with your planning worksheet because the system thinks you've got maybe demand unless they're really old. But, getting all those sales orders off your system and archived, I think is a good thing to do as well. But this all assumes we all got tons of time at the end of the year to do all this stuff, but you got to do it sometime. It's a good marker to kind of get your system kind of tidied up and ready to go.
You just reminded me of one that's an admin related. Make sure that you don't have any users still set up as super users. You might have set them up as a super user to get past an error or some sort of problem. And you intended to remove that once you got past that.
Yeah, Cynthia, great story. The great point. I have a story. When I first started at my previous company and I got there were 42 users on the system and there were 42 super users on the system.
That's not uncommon.
It's a classic implementation strategy. Let's not worry about permissions while we're implementing and we'll fix it later. Terrible idea, by the way. But that's a great point. Like review your and that would be back to being an audit thing. Like we need to know, because suddenly your segregation of duties is immaterial if everyone can do everything.
Right. Well, and I think the other thing that happens is you might be an organization that only has a review, right? You don't go through an audit. You might have a review or just a compilation, so it doesn't get called to your attention by someone else. So it's your responsibility to make sure that's happening.
I actually have a client. They got a ding for it, so they created a couple of new roles, gave them the same permissions as a super user, and then the auditor has no problem with it. I mean, they all had page 0, table 0, code unit 0, ding ding, good to go.
That's cheating.
It's not cheating. It's being creative.
I love that expression.
That's the definition of cheating.
Yeah. But it's also a good time to check if users left the company or changed roles. It's a good time to review all that.
Yeah, free up some licenses while you're at it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Going back to the data cleanup and the change logs. Also, your sales order and purchase archives. How much of that do you want to hold on to? It's a good time to question that, clean that up. Sales quotes, we don't use them, but our EDI 860s change requests actually create them. And if you delete the 860, if you don't process it, it leaves the quote behind. So if you're in that situation, it's a good time to look at sales quotes and clean those up as well. And add-ons, a lot of add-ons create lots of log files, EDI especially. So it's a good time to do a lot of that cleanup as well.
Just have your IT work all evening through the holidays to do all this cleanup. It's no problem. They don't mind it at all.
No, we love to.
Hey, we do have a life. Come on, we do have a life. Believe it or not.
You do?
Just kidding.
Hey, can I
Hey,
piggyback
IT
on
doesn't
that?
like people anyway. They don't mind being by themselves.
Hey,
I wanna
hey,
piggyback
I'm
on
sitting
that.
right here, Rob. I'm right here.
What was that, Kate?
I want to piggyback on that in terms of add-ons. So I'm new to Business Central and we have extensions, which I think is the same thing as an add-on. Our consultant hasn't been able to add the Microsoft update that went out they're saying our add-ons are preventing, our extensions are preventing that. And they think we
There
have to
are a number of issues right now with BC 19.
You're experiencing that too?
Well, I have a client right now that we can't update because they're going one by one with all the extensions. Microsoft it's been a slow rollout for BC 19.
Okay.
Well, yes, but it is also, I mean, it's because whomever built the extensions don't actually pay attention to what's happening in nav. I mean, I've done a customization for a client, just a small import of a text file to generate some sales orders and nothing fancy. And then, you know, a couple of months later, he asked me, hey, can you add it to do this thing too? Sure. And I open up the project and boom, all of a sudden, a million warning messages come up because this function, the call that I use, this is going to be depreciated in the next version, or gonna. So it's all of a sudden the base app changes, and some of the tools that we as developers have used no longer doesn't work, or now takes less parameters or more parameters. And if you as a app builder don't actually run a routine build against the next versions, you don't know about it. And that's where I have told to I feel as a customer you really need to own that process. You need to have a build pipeline in order for you to know that, oh, in 6 months I won't be able to upgrade because of one of my extensions. Now, if that's an extension in the app source, they may be aware of it and may be working on an update. But it's especially important if it's something that you had your partner built, and now sudden it's going to prevent that from happening. So I think you're going to see a lot more of that kind of stuff happening, and it's all about. And the thing is, most of these things could have been avoided if there was a pipeline running where you at least would know about it. But yeah, for 19, I know there was issues just from there as well. But
And
if you have, but yeah,
I was just going to say, one of the things that I was surprised about, though, with 19 are some of the things that changed. I heard a lot of people say, oh, you know, if you look at the list, there's not a lot here. But some of the changes that they made were at a very base level, like what they did to templates. You know, we now have different, you know, pages and lists and what have you for templates. So if an extension was built on, you know, the old table and now we have a different set of tables. And I agree with you if you're on, what is it, Yammer and some of these others where you can kind of keep ahead of things also. But it's a lot to keep track of. Can you make any recommendations of where you would go to be on top of all of that?
I mean, honestly, as I said, you got to get a build pipeline running, and
just test it with every cumulative update.
I mean, so the apps that I have, they're not in App Store. They're open source actually. I have a build server running right over here, and every day at 5 o'clock, I build a version of the US and Canadian version of Business Central. I compare and I compile them towards my apps for today's version, the next minor version, and then the next major version. And it will then tell me, oh, you know what, in the next major version, this feature there or this piece of standard code you called now takes more or less parameters. So now I can fix that before it becomes a problem.
But as an end user, we can't really do that, right?
You can.
You can? Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something that you want to talk to your partner about. There are products out there that will help doing it, but yeah, there's no need. So the thing is, you as a customer are the only one that knows what apps that you have, right? The fact that I do this with the app that I have is fine, right? But I know of people who, you know, a customer came to them and, oh, this app doesn't work, and well, he tried it against a Kronos database, right? Meaning just the base app plus his app, everything worked just fine. But because there was another app that did something, it meant that his app didn't work because it actually broke something in standard. So in order for you to run a complete build on your environment, well, you the customer are the only one that can do that. Now, do I think that all customers can have the technical ability to do that by themselves? Maybe not, but that does not mean that you shouldn't own that process. Yeah, have your partner help you set that up, but under your own DevOps environment, and I mean I think it's free. I mean, you need to have a build server, and you can rent those in the cloud for some odd reason. Do you have to run them daily? Probably not. I would probably do it at least weekly, but as a bare minimum monthly, because at least now you have a 2-month warning before the new minor version comes in, right?
So Kate, in answer to your question, it could be held up by an ISV, an app that you've purchased isn't ready to work under that new version. It could be held up because a customization, which in the form of an extension done by your partner, is no longer compatible and they need to do work on it. Or like Henrik said, all of the above might not be playing well with each other,
right,
with this new version. So to hear what you're hearing is probably a valid response. But then the question is, where is the problem? The reason I think it would be beneficial to know is if you have an ISV that is constantly behind, and staying behind, and it's not a critical ISV to you, and there's maybe another option out there. There's all kinds of considerations with that, and I know, and a lot of people, bells are ringing in their heads. But my point is, just be aware of what's holding you up, because maybe you can make a decision to not have that be an issue anymore in the future.
And truth be told, I mean, if Microsoft if there's an app in the app source that keeps things from upgrading, I think they say a year, that app will just be kicked out and it will be uninstalled, and they're going to move on.
But that's a year of going without being able to update. That's not good.
No. But sometimes some of the changes they do, Microsoft have done, are very big for some ISV products, right? Where they rely on this thing. I mean, sales pricing, for instance, and all of a sudden now, boom, it's going to change completely how it's done. It's kind of like, whoops, the ISV need to get a chance to figure out, well,
right,
what approach they want to take.
And as Cynthia said, they are some deeper changes that are underneath. One of the other things, in addition to templates, is the inventory setup. Who would have thought that, they're now with the integration to CRM, they've also changed the way that interacts with cross references. So, some ISVs that do heavy inventory adjustments or transactions may be struggling with this new update that's coming out.
Right.
Yeah, I just say, I know we're up against time, and this is maybe a little bit of a satellite topic for year end. But Kate, as somebody new to Business Central, I would just say, totally agree with everything everybody's been saying. But the cause of your problem it's not a secret. There is a way to find out what at least the initial cause is. If it's this extension or this extension, doesn't mean that's the only problem. But at least an idea on where you can start, and that can be tested in a sandbox by uninstalling it and seeing if it takes the new code. You have 90 days, right? Unless someone knows differently and I'm out of the loop, you have 90 days from the time the release came out to resolve this problem, you or your partner do. You'll be forced to take the new version at that point, losing any functionality that code, whether it's an ISV.
Okay, last I heard it was a year, but that may have changed.
I believe it's 90 days now. It's a year with it living on AppSource outside of conforming to the code. But your tenant itself has to take the new code 90 days from the release.
And that's assuming you're on Azure managed by Microsoft, not private hosted or on premise.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Good point, Sean.
Awesome.
It's a good news, bad news thing, I think.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
But we still love Business Central.
No, I mean, so quite honestly, I'm not surprised that some of these apps are failing and maybe even leaving, right? Because if there's not enough revenue for an app, I mean, there's a cost to maintaining an app. I mean, there's definitely a cost to building an app, but also to maintaining it. So, I think this is gonna settle down at some point in time. I'm sure. But I also think that's why, I mean, if you guys are running an app or using an app and you like it, do everybody else a favor and write a review. Because I'm looking for apps myself for clients, right? And it's kind of like, and then there's 7 different apps that say they're doing it, and none of them have any review. So it's kind of like, well, which ones are actually, having great support and whatnot else, right? So I think, we have to help each other here to make this happen.
Great point. Great point.
I like Amy's comment. Thank you for all the tasks you've just added to my to-do list.
But hey, at least not now you know what you don't know.
I said up front I was hoping to relieve a little bit of stress, but I think we went the wrong way on that. But
where's that drink? I need that drink.
It is time for a drink. Wow, we've had quite a few people drop off, so I really appreciate everybody staying on as long as you have. What a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone, and the questions and so forth. Let me post the survey link in the chat again, and also remind you of the December Mix It Up. It is up on the Meetup site, and then I'll do the formal announcement in a few days, so you can get registered for that. We do have the Power Platform Mix It Up coming up in January, and if you have some other tips you thought of that you wish you would have gotten out there, or you have another question, there is a comments thread out on the Meetup group, so you can always post those points there as well, and everybody will get notified about that. So I think that's it. Thank you very much, everybody. I certainly picked up a lot. I hope you did too. Thanks for making the time during a very busy season. Hope to see you in December. Take care and stay healthy, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.